Good evening. You're watching our special broadcast on the race for president. But guess what? Suddenly it seems not so much to be about the presidential election as it seems to be about turmoil within the UPA, within the Congress, as the allies, two key allies, Mamata Banerjee and Mulayam Singh Yadav, train their guns directly at the Prime Minister. That's right. It happens only in India that two of the main allies of the government now want the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to be the president. That's our big story this evening as Mamata Banerjee and Mulayam Singh Yadav hurl a googly at the Congress on a day when Sonia Gandhi endorses, according to Mamata Banerjee, Pranab Mukherjee as her first choice and Hamid Ansari as her second choice for president. Mamata Banerjee and Mulayam Singh derail the Congress's plans. They reject the choices and come up with a list of their own. Who's on their list? Their picks. Abdul Kalam is their first choice, but the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is their second choice, and their third choice, Somnath Chatterjee from West Bengal, the former Lok Sabha Speaker. Those are the three names that Mulayam Singh Yadav and Mamata Banerjee want for president. Are the allies then saying that they're losing faith in Prime Minister Manmohan Singh? The Congress has not responded so far, nor has the Prime Minister's office. On a day of public embarrassment for both the Congress and Manmohan Singh, we're asking whether the presidential election has now become a story about a beleaguered government where the man in charge, the Prime Minister, has now been embarrassed by his own allies and more than the allies has been embarrassed by the silence of his own party. Why is the Congress silent? Why has the Congress not spoken? Why has the Congress not come out and said Manmohan Singh will remain our Prime Minister, not our President? That's the big story we're focusing on. Before we introduce our panel this evening, my colleagues who've been tracking every twist and turn, what's not said on record of this big political story. Rahul Srivastav, Sandeep Phukan and Sunil Prabhu join us now. Sandeep Phukan, let me start with you if I can. To me, what really stands out is the fact that the Congress has been silent. It's now been over 2.5 hours since Mamata Banerjee and Mulayam Singh Yadav literally bowled this googly, saying that Manmohan Singh should be president. He's not even their first choice, he's their second choice, and we haven't heard a word out of the Congress. Sandeep, what do you make of it?
That's right. Well, Barkha, when we report this story, I would say that, we have to report it as a set of theories and a set of facts. Theory that this drama is actually playing out to a script. There have been several voices privately saying that we want a change of leadership. Congress didn't know how to handle it. That's why they fired from the shoulders of the allies, someone like Mulayam Singh Yadav and Mamata Banerjee. Fact. So far, Congress has not issued any statement. But having said this, I have managed to speak to a couple of ministers, and they told me that they were completely stumped. They were taken by surprise. They deny that this is playing to a script. They say that they don't want to come on record and give sound bites to television cameras because they don't want to aggravate the fault lines. But the fact is that they were completely taken by surprise, not so much by Mamata, Barkha. What they are surprised about is actually Mulayam Singh Yadav. They believe that Mulayam Singh Yadav is a very seasoned, mature politician. Why would he do this? Because they were under the impression that he is completely, totally backing Pranab Mukherjee. The Congress always knew that when it comes to Pranab Mukherjee's candidature, Mamata always had a question mark. And perhaps that explains why she has brought in Somnath Mukherjee.
Somnath Chatterjee, in fact, Sandeep, because had she come out and said...
out the Bengali pride
That's
factor.
right. Had she come out and said that I'm not going to support Pranab Mukherjee, but had Somnath Chatterjee not been on that list, and we're going to try and speak to him in London, he's away in London, away from all this, then she would have been accused of blocking a nominee from West Bengal. So she's come up with one of her own. Now, Sandeep, you seem to be indicating that this is not part of the Congress in cahoots with the allies, firing from the shoulder of the allies to effect a sort of mid-term change in the post of Prime Minister. But nothing explains the silence. Sunil Prabhu, you actually dropped by at North Block earlier. this was meant to be a day of good cheer for the finance minister, because for the first time you had Mamata Banerjee actually saying that Sonia Gandhi had given the thumbs up for Pranab Mukherjee, and now all of this seems to be unraveling. We should of course say that in our political analysis, Pranab Mukherjee could still well be president. The game is not over for him. We have to see whether Mamata Banerjee and Mulayam Singh Yadav are posturing to push for perhaps their own person as vice president. If there's some larger game on, it's not over for Pranab Mukherjee yet. But what has Mr. Mukherjee been doing, Sunil, since this topsy-turvy news came in that's in a sense shaken his plans upside down?
He's actually, Barka, carrying on his work as usual. In fact, even as that announcement was made by Mamata Banerjee, that saying that Sonia Gandhi's choice was Pranab Mukherjee and then the second choice was Hamid Ansari, the present vice president, he carried on with his scheduled meeting of meeting insurance companies, public sector insurance companies. Clearly, he's carrying on with his work. He didn't want to say anything because he wanted it to be officially announced by the Congress president. And of course, then this googly, as we have been talking about, the fact that Mamata Banerjee and Mulayam Singh Yadav, who was saying just till the other day that he doesn't want to see a bureaucrat being named for the post of president, naming APJ Abdul Kalam, and then of course Manmohan Singh and Somnath Chatterjee. Clearly, the Congress sources that whom I've been speaking to are quite categorical, Barka, that there is no question of Manmohan Singh stepping down from the post of Prime Minister.
But Sunil, if there's no question of it, why hasn't the Congress spoken? Why isn't there a Congress representative on this program tonight? Why are they silent?
Well, I think, Barka, it's really a decision. The CWC has left that decision to the Congress president. The Congress president's key interlocutors are at present, as we speak, working on the phone lines with various alliance partners, various other allies. There are at least 18 of them who support this UPA government, some from inside, some from outside. And that's the reason why they want to get a broad consensus. They have to go back to the drawing board to, fill in the gaps to get that consensus, because Mrs. Gandhi, when she put that name to Mamata Banerjee, was after due diligence. She had thought about it. She put that name to Mamata Banerjee. Mamata Banerjee said she will get back to her. Went back to Mulayam Singh Yadav. They knew that she was going to be a troublemaker. Clearly, they have done that work. They want to consult the allies before they rule that out. That is something that has to be done in the fitness of things, because this is a coalition government, and that's the reason why at this stage they are not coming out in the open. But what we have been told categorically is that there is no question of the Prime Minister stepping down at this stage for the post of President. That is something that Mrs. Gandhi herself has made clear a number of times at various party forums, and she was the first, in fact, in the run-up to 2009 to name him as the Prime Ministerial candidate.
But in fact, Sunil, we remember that when once at a press conference, there were questions asked about whether Pranab Mukherjee could in fact be Deputy Prime Minister. Sonia Gandhi was so absolutely firm in ruling that out. So the silence still remains a bit curious, though I tend to share your assessment that despite the allies embarrassing the Prime Minister and embarrassing the Congress, and there's no doubt that the Prime Minister has been grievously embarrassed today, it is unlikely, unless he chooses to, in a sense, step aside, that the Congress will push him towards any mid-tenure change. Now, Rahul Srivastav, the BJP had all but given up on having any kind of active role to play in these presidential elections. They had, in a sense, scotched their own game and queered the pitch when they declared Abdul Kalam to be the candidate without the numbers requisite for him. But now, if you look at Mulayam Singh Yadav and Mamata Banerjee's statement and you take it at face value, then Abdul Kalam actually has the numbers. But the point is that in Delhi, in this season of politics, nothing is as it seems, and the Congress may not take Mulayam Singh Yadav and Mamata Banerjee's demand for Abdul Kalam as next president at face value. What is the BJP saying?
But let's dissect what has really happened. The first thing is that the Pranab Mukherjee factor perhaps forced the Congress to come up with two names. If Congress wanted only Pranab Mukherjee, it would have named Pranab Mukherjee. Hamid Ansari has not been putting pressure on the Congress party to name him as a presidential choice. So Hamid Ansari's name was there because Congress wanted him to be one of the presidential candidates. Now what has happened that the word from Samajwadi Party, I'm standing right outside Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav's house, the word is perhaps the Congress tried to push the onus of selecting one of them on the Trinamool Congress and Samajwadi Party and the alliance partners, because the Congress was under pressure from Pranab Mukherjee and several factions that he should be made the president. And the allies did not want to succumb to this pressure. They didn't want to get into this because of their own compulsions. First, if they don't back Hamid Ansari, who is a minority member from Uttar Pradesh, Mulayam Singh Yadav would not like that. If Mamata Banerjee opposes a Bengali from West Bengal, it will hurt Mamata Banerjee. So they have actually created an opposition to what the Congress tried to do, and they are matching nerves by nerves. On the other hand, the moment they mentioned the name Abdul Kalam and Manmohan Singh, the BJP and the NDA opposition is certainly sitting in alert. Primarily what has happened that the BJP was always looking for an opportunity that there should be disarray in the UPA camp which can be exploited by the BJP. There are two possibilities that the BJP is looking at. One, exploit the disarray in the UPA vis-a-vis what the TMC and the Samajwadi Party are doing. If not possible to install your own president or somebody which is a non-Congress president, at least create an image that the Congress cannot even have its own president installed without so much of crisis.
Yeah.
Perhaps that point already is being delivered home.
Yeah.
The second is, if perhaps things work out, perhaps Mamata Banerjee and Samajwadi Party are not building merely a smokescreen, perhaps they are serious about it on the face value if they are taken, then the BJDs, then the AIDMKs, the JDUs, several other players can throw up their numbers. Then the Congress might be in a bit of a trouble. Perhaps weakening the Congress, discomforting the Congress is the larger viewpoint emerging in the BJP.
Do you have the NDTV Profit app? All the markets, all the news and your own homemade, ready-made portfolio available there for you.
We will right now answer what you should sell, what you should buy when markets are down.
Download at ndtvprofit.com/apps. Get the best app from the channel you trust.